Hayden Locke, President and CEO of Marimaca Copper. We're developing the Marimaca Oxide project in northern Chile and also exploring, and we've announced some very exciting drill results at our Pampa Medina project, which is about 25 kilometres from our flagship Marimaca Oxide project.
Hayden, good to see you. You're looking dark and moody there. Very seductive indeed. So tell me more about this press release.
Yeah, 7 a.m. here in Chile. I'm down with the team as we finalise the DFS, but obviously been meeting with our geologists. It's a pretty exciting result for us, primarily because it confirms that really exceptional drill hole that we released right at the end of last year, which was SMR01. The reason we drilled a diamond drill hole is because SMR01 was terminated at 650 metres, which is the absolute maximum depth that RC rig could drill. But what was interesting was there was mineralisation at the bottom of the hole. So this hole was designed to confirm the results from SMR01 and then extend significantly into the lower horizons to see if that bornite and chalcopyrite mineralization extended. So yeah, it's a very exciting drill hole for us.
Okay, and so how is your team, yourself and your team, interpreting the kind of structural architecture and now controlling this kind of manto style mineralization that you're seeing at Pampa Medina?
So what's really interesting about this is we now think there are two stacked manttos, one on top of the other, and they're two different styles of mineralization, which obviously presents two opportunities. In the upper unit, which is where we intersected about 80 meters at a bit over 1.2%, including a higher grade zone of 20 plus meters at 2.5%-ish. That is coincident with the extension of the Pampa Medina horizon. So the Pampa Medina is the deposit that we acquired that has a historical resource of about 40 million tonnes at 0.7%. So this really confirms, again, that mineralisation is extending. The hole deviated about 25 metres to the north of SMR01. So not a step-out hole, but a kind of step-out hole. What was interesting about it, though, was it intersected a portion of a barren dike, which is part of the reason that the grade is slightly lower. So we're now understanding that the dike systems that cross-cut these deposits are very important controls of mineralization. There are some that are barren, there are some that are mineralized. So we're gradually getting a better understanding of what's going on. But that's really exciting for us in terms of the potential to expand Pampa Medina. But then I think really what we're waiting for now is what's going on in that last 300 odd meters of the hole, where we've seen pretty significant visual bornite and chalcopyrite, as we allude to in the announcement. What we don't have yet is grades, but our geologists are excited about that, and we expect we should get assays back in the next couple of weeks.
And tell me, in terms of that kind of some of the sedimentary units, what role does that have to play in kind of localizing high grade copper in what you're seeing at the moment?
Well, we don't actually know yet, but what we know about the Cachorro style system, which is what we think we're drilling here, and Cachorro, if you remember, is that tier one new discovery made by Antofagasta Minerals, that is. They have a resource of a bit over 300 million tonnes at over 1% copper, so a very, very good resource. They're spending $200 million on exploration because they think they can double the size of that resource. So what was really important at Cachorro was the bornite in that system indicated that you were coming to the center of the system. So the bornite is very interesting for us. But equally, the extension of that oxide, that leachable zone, is likely to be very complementary to our strategy of bringing an integrated PEA for the development of Pampa Medina in to justify a step up from our contemplated 50,000 tonnes in the DFS to 70 or even 75,000 tonnes of copper produced for an extended period of time.
Okay, and it just obviously that kind of helps try and understand the importance of the bornite and I guess the chalcopyrite mineralization. Have you any sense of like how continuous this sulfide manto is along strike or even down dip, and if not, what are you going to do to work that out?
Well, not yet, although I would say the hole deviated quite significantly at depth, as often happens when you're drilling deep drill holes. So we think there is a deviation of 70 to 80 meters at depth, which is, it's kind of a step out again. And it shows that bornite mineralization continues at that sort of distance from the original bornite intersection. So yeah, there is some continuity of mineralization, but we won't know until we go back and put more drill holes in, which we fully intend to do.
Right, and there's I guess signs of some kind of polymetallic type discovery potential here, in the sense that you've got galena and saprolite encountered in hole 2. suggests a slightly different mineralization event or fluid regime. So again, what do you know at the moment?
So that was a real surprise, and that's a very interesting intersection for us. There was also some silver in there, and so obviously we'll be assaying for all of those. What was interesting about that was we have three clear horizons. We have the upper sedimentary unit, which is sort of interbedded sandstones and shales. The bornite rich intersection in SMD01 is actually hosted in an interbedded sandstone and conglomerate horizon, which was slightly different. And the polymetallic intersection is actually in the unit below that, the meta sediments, which are right at the bottom, the closest sediments to the heat source. So indicates potentially there are three different types of deposits that we could be looking for. Most obviously, they're all linked to the same heat source and the same source of hydrothermal fluids. Speaking to Sergio about it, he's saying, look, there's zonations with these big types of deposits, but he doesn't know very many deposits in Chile that have this type of mineralization. This is much more akin to a sedimentary polymetallic in Africa, in his view.
That's interesting. So I was going to ask about that kind of zonation or vertical metal variation, and what that suggested, and quite frankly, are there any other copper polymetallic systems in the region? But if not, I guess you've got a bit more work to do, which is exciting. But does this mean that you need to kind of change the 3D geological model as a result?
Not really, because it looks very continuous along strike to the northeast. And there are clearly controlling structures on either side of Pampa Medina. So what we're now working out through all of this drilling is there are controlling faults on either side. The area, although we think it's one continuous big manto system extending over probably 5 by 4 kilometres with variable grades in the horizons, but we're seeing very continuous evidence of copper mineralization across that whole area, but it is faulted and there's a lot of uplift and downdrop across the deposit. So it's going to be, slow and steady for the time being, but obviously ramping up as we get a better understanding of what's going on at the system. I think the strategy will become, and this is subject to us getting these results back, we will likely focus on some infill drilling between SMR and SMD01 back to the Pampa Medina deposit, to try to get closer to an inferred resource for that extension, because we're pretty confident that will extend a long strike to the north, and therefore we'll be able to link up Pampa Medina with that end. So that's potentially a nearly 100% increase in the strike length of the Pampa Medina deposit. And every now and then we will extend those holes at depth to test out what's going on below, whether that conglomerate horizon is continuous and whether it's mineralized in the same way we've seen. And then the third part is to go and drill around Madrugador, which is the other deposit that we acquired. And the reason for doing that drilling will be twofold. One, to try and extend the mineralization, and two, to allow us to bring that into a current NI 43101 resource, which we can then use as part of the integration study if we get it done in time.
Okay, and what does this do in terms of the any kind of preliminary metallurgical test work? Because it sounds like you've got a lot to figure out still, but when would you start that?
Well, so it'll be part of that drilling program. We have quite a lot of core for Pampa Medina, but the core is quite old, so much better to use new core. So the third part of that drilling program will be to start being able to do some metallurgical test work in columns, meter high columns, just to get a sense of it. But we already have a pretty significant database of acid solubilities, cyanide solubilities, and acid consumption. So we have a fairly good indication of what those recoveries are going to be. And it's very acid soluble, so high recoveries. We would expect better recoveries than at Marimaca.
Okay, and with that we'll do some pardon me, mineralogical characterization work as well to kind of understand sulfide grades and liberation characteristics, etc.
Potentially depends on how extensive the conglomerate primary mineralization horizon is. If it's very continuous, then yes, we'll go straight into that work to understand, what sort of net smelter returns we can get on that.
Okay, and any sense of any kind of deleterious elements in there at the moment?
Haven't seen anything.
Zinc?
No, haven't seen anything yet. No energite, none of the nasty things that would be a red flag to us. But obviously, we haven't done the final. We haven't done any of the full test work, but nothing visual.
Right. Okay. And you mentioned obviously maybe doing a sort of how this impacts them kind of maiden Pampa Medina MRE. Does this slow things down this sort of because like I say, you weren't expecting to see something like this. Will you kind of when do you sort of work out the pace at which you want to move this one forward? Because obviously you've got to kind of delight the market, but at the same time, the opportunity here seems probably a little bit bigger than even you were expecting.
Yeah, we definitely don't want to cap people's thinking as to the scale of this, but we're also running we want to be able to present to people the technical and economic viability of developing Pampa Medina and putting it through our centralized processing facility. So it's important to us that we get that integration study out so that we can say we have confirmed at a PEA level that this is both technically and economically viable and adds significant value to Marimaca. And then we'll try our hardest to get that into an inferred resource. I don't think it'll be possible in the timelines that we're working. Nico and the team that we've appointed to do the PEA are moving very quickly. So I think that it'll be done before we get the sort of upgraded resource out, if it's possible.
Okay, so all categories, fine. I guess at this point it doesn't matter too much. In terms of the budget allocation, etc. Again, does that sort of change or sway you in terms of how you get after this with the drill bit?
Yeah, a little bit, and primarily because of the uncertainty that the trade war has caused, and the obvious impact on our share price. We would have liked to have raised a significant amount of money for Sergio to go out and really go hard on the drilling, but we're also equally mindful that we don't want to be diluting at a price that we think is lower than it should be relative to the value that we have in our projects. So we'll be finding that balance, but we will definitely find money for Sergio to continue to drill, maybe at a slower pace, but certainly focusing first on connecting the Pampa Medina extension, the Norte extension, with some deeper drilling. And then if the markets allow later in the year, we'll go out and raise more money if the results suggest that we should continue to drill aggressively.
Okay, and so the strategy in terms of this, Spoken Hub, single large-scale mineralized system, that you're sticking with that for now. Is there anything in terms of what you could do which would change your mind, or does that make the most sense right now?
No, it definitely makes the most sense. Marimaca is very well advanced. We're in the final throes of our DFS. We are in our permitting phase, and that's all going really well. And so, this project and these projects will be several years behind Marimaca in terms of their maturity and therefore our ability to take them into production. So the plan is still very much focus on Marimaca oxide project, bring it into production as quickly as we can, but always thinking that we will look to expand and look to extend our mine life by using the assets that are within the hub and spoke radius. And so it won't change our development strategy. Obviously, if we make an enormous sulfide discovery like a Cachorro style system, then we have a bigger project to start thinking about, but I don't think it changes our development strategy.
Okay, so the integration study, that is it Stantec doing that? I can't remember.
Stantec's doing it, yep.
Yeah, okay. So as far as you're concerned, this is oxide resource project for now, and we'll work out through the drill bit what may come later with sort of with sulfides, yeah?
Exactly.
Okay, nice and simple. So you're final words from you in terms of what does this do for you? Why has this been a good use of money, and what more can we look forward to?
Well, we now think that Pampa Medina has the potential to nearly double in size if there's continuous mineralization between the current Pampa Medina manto horizon out to the Pampa Medina Norte extension, and so that obviously underpins a higher production rate for a more extended period of time. Based on our internal assessment of Madrugador and Pampa Medina, which admittedly is based on Madrugador being a non-43-101 resource, we think that there's the potential for 20 to 25,000 tonnes for 13 or 14 years from those two without any exploration success. If we have exploration success, then we're almost certainly looking at that higher production rate for a longer period of time, which is quite exciting for us because I've always said to you, 50,000 tonnes is great. It's at the low end of what's globally significant. But 70 to 75,000 tonnes is very significant. And actually that would make us, in the ASX context, the 6th largest copper project on the ASX. So it's a really meaningful step change for us.
It's a meaningful step change for you, but it's also quite, significant bit of data for people to understand. There's not a lot out there, not a lot of good copper projects getting to the point or nearing any kind of near-term revenue. It's coming from the existing bigger producers who've got their own challenges.
That's exactly right.
Interesting time for copper out there at the moment and copper companies.
Very interesting. Yep.
Hayden, I'm going to let you crack on back to the grind. We'll see you soon.
Thanks, Matt.